That everyone should do it. That if you don't know who to vote for, research. Everybody should register to vote. It makes a difference. Even though I know they're always changing the rules on us, we can't stop. We still got to keep pressing forward. So for those, everybody vote, and your vote does count.
It's important to vote because you need to make sure your voice is heard.
With no vote, you have no voice. And even though sometimes you might be concerned about those that are in office and those that might be representing you, the only way that you can make that change and be the representation yourself is through voting.
I think everybody has a responsibility to go vote. And I think it's one of the reasons makes the United States what it is. I think we got a lot of freedoms because of that.
I support funding for schools, and you know that you go to a school that doesn't have enough books and doesn't have enough computers and needs to have an art program or needs other resources, and that's the candidate that says, I'm going to vote for that funding, versus someone who has an issue who says, I don't think we should spend any more money on resources in the community. That's an immediate way that you can see how if you vote for one person versus the other, they're going to make decisions that directly impact you.
Voting is important is because it can help us, help communities, get more funding for their schools, business, and all around to get more money for the community.
It's absolutely important, and not just on the presidential level, on a community level, voting anybody that's on your city council, anybody that's a judge around here, voting on every level is absolutely essential.
Everything within this movement, the movement, coronavirus really encourages people to get out and vote. Make your voices heard. It really starts on a local level, making sure that we have the right people in place, so then we have these government policies. We've elected people that have our interest in mind.
You should get to know your local officials, see what they're doing, who they're involved with, and volunteer and vote whenever possible. Not only national elections, more often than not, people are concentrating on presidential elections. But this is the city we live in. So you need to know your city, your state, your county, your community. Even voting in your community councils and that type of thing. Voting is very, very important.
The importance of voting to me is, to vote someone in that's believe in the things that I believe in, that's looking out for me. Everybody needs to vote for somebody to represent them. They get a true representation of themselves.
Voting is important. First, really starting at the local level, right? Local level, taking care, those local level things take care of your communities. Your communities impact the bigger neighborhoods impact the city impacts the state impacts the country.
Everybody needs to vote. Get yourself educated on the issues, on the candidates, because this is what changes things. The policies that are made are put into place by your votes. Your voice matters, and if you're not voting, then you're not being heard. So you can protest all day long, but if you're not going to the polls, then your voice is really silent.
Overall work is really important to change policy in the city, and that we're treated with respect in regards to the criminal justice system, in regards to education, policies that are made for us in the workplace. So really just this project as a whole is really saying we matter. Our voices matter, our lives matter.
We have a problem with the voting system. If our black people get out there and vote, some changes can be made. There's a lot of organizations, they don't vote, but we must vote. Until we vote to get our voices heard, there will not be a change. But when you look at the history of this country, when you think about for lack of a better term, the sort of ruling class, the work that they do to suppress voting rights.
On ways that we can help to change policy. Policy is what really has set the current predicament that we're in.
They think you voting for the president. Nah, player, you voting for your president, your governor, your mayor, your judges get appointed by the people who we vote for. So a lot of time, see, it's a thing that calls redistricting, right? So a lot of our neighborhoods are chopped up and redistricted so that our votes will matter less. So you don't just vote for the president, you vote for people who affect your neighborhood directly. Your police chiefs, all that type of stuff.
Voting for the presidency, but really voting on the things that matter and where the money's been spent, and what the schools are being given for your community. So I think it's super important to get out, knowing the issues, and letting your voice be heard. Because what other time do you really have an opinion that actually physically counts?
Very important. Voting is essential. You have to make sure that you are voting every single election to make sure that you're putting the right people in office.
I believe the United States has like a 30% turnout rate, or actually it might even be lower than that.
I'm old enough to recognize the sacrifices that Black activists, civil rights activists made in the 60s. And so for me, when a person decides not to, when a Black person or a person of color decides not to vote, for me, that's a slap in the face.
I vote because I want to be heard. I vote because it's my civic duty. I vote because people died in order for me to be able to vote. So I feel like it's my responsibility to make my voice heard.
Our forefathers has fought for us, our rights to vote, and that right to vote is not something to be taken lightly. That's how we make actual change.
The slavery that we are still in, that needs to be stopped and broken now. It's said that racism and slavery is still going on in the 20th century, but it never died until we become a voice to speak up and get out and vote, where we can put a break in this slavery and racism.
Our country is going in the wrong direction, and so many people are upset about it. Now it's a chance for you to do something about it. People are marching, and they should be marching. But now let's move marching and have a protest at the ballot box.
Vote because you need to make sure your voice is heard. You know, we can do all the protesting and marching we want to do, but until you get in there and start pushing some buttons, you know, I don't think that you're going to make the exact change that you want to make. So you want to make change not only by doing marching and protesting, but also by getting in that box and making some good decisions, voting on the right folks.
You know, I really want the words to come into action. So when we hear equality, when we hear we the people, I want us to be a part of the people. So with this election, I just plan for change. I hope for change.
That's how the change is going to be solidified. We have to get out there and vote so we can change these laws.
Because like I just said, I feel like, especially if I have a problem with who's in office, I can't really have an opinion if I don't want change. So I contributed to it. I made sure my voice was heard. I made sure, you know, that what I believed in was represented in office.
To not vote is the craziest thing to me, because people throughout history have fought, have sacrificed, have done all kinds of things to get us to the point where we are able to vote, and for someone to not take that stance, and if you can't say that you are looking for change or you want change and not put into action, and action is going and voting.
We have a problem with the voting system. If our Black people get out there and vote, some changes can be made. There's a lot of organizations, they don't vote, but we must vote. Until we vote to get our voices heard, there will not be a change.
Voting is important, but I wouldn't know personally the importance of voting because I'm not old enough to vote. I just hear that it's important. And hopefully one day I'll figure out personally to me why it's so important, but it's just important because everyone's telling me it's important.
Togetherness, you know, justice, humanity, you know, everybody coming together as one, you know, people being treated as human, you know, just coming together. Peace, happiness, joy, all the things that is how it's supposed to be.
So don't be iffy about, you know, a lot of people who they'll march and they'll protest, but they don't vote. And I'm like, look, man, your vote does count. It's been elections that's been won and lost by hundreds of votes, and it's millions of people vote. So somebody who's iffy about it, I would try to make them realize that there is no doubt that your vote will count, because look at the elections that have been lost by few amount of votes.
views is that right now we have to vote like we never voted before. With so much unrest in our communities. Not only are we in 2020 from a presidential election, but also understanding our local voting power as well. So voting, to me, I think is the most imperative, the best thing that you can possibly do for yourself.
I think everyone should vote. Voting rights is the most important issue in my political issues that I care about. Everything else is downstream of voting. If you don't show up to vote, nothing can change after that. And if people don't have access and the information they need to show up to vote, then again, nothing will be changed for those people. So the ballot is the strongest way to implement change, I think.
We want to be the last generation to deal with voter suppression.
The last generation to deal with unjust laws.
The last generation to deal with poorly funded schools.
The last generation to deal with police brutality.
The last generation to deal with unjustly prosecution.